Very good evening. You're watching the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. In perhaps the most scathing indictment of the Modi government's policies so far, American billionaire George Soros, in an address at the World Economic Forum in Davos, has called the surge of nationalism under the Modi government the most frightening setback for open societies. Soros was speaking about authoritarian regimes around the world when he included his remarks on India. Soros' speech comes at a time when India has slipped 10 places to 51st position in the 2019 Democracy Index's global rankings that the Economist Intelligence Unit puts together. The reasons given there include an erosion of civil liberties. The same magazine has featured what they say are divisive policies on the front page of the cover really of their latest edition with Intolerant India, the words written there. Now, some may say, should we really care about what a magazine and a billionaire investor thinks? But over the last few months, there have been more and more international attention and people speaking out, questioning on what is happening here in India. Does this tarnish India's image around the world? Why is the India story no longer about the fastest growing economy with a surging middle class? Why has it become about CAA and NRC? To talk more on this today, I'm joined by Neelanjan Sircar, Senior Visiting Fellow at CPR, Sriram, Resident Editor at the Economic Times, and Madhavan Narayanan, Senior Journalist. Welcome to all of you and thank you for speaking with us today. Neelanjan, let me get your take first. And Soros, of course, speaks a lot about Trump in that speech. If you read the whole speech, he speaks about, a number of democracies that are concerning him. But he also talks about India and says the rise of nationalism. He speaks about Kashmir. He speaks about, CAA, NRC, refers to it at least. Is that a worrying sign?
I think it should be quite worrying for India. I mean, I think India is waking up to a fact that I think a lot of the international community knows, right? Which is that, I think a lot of Indians at the highest levels would like to think that they can throw their weight around like China, like Israel. But the reality is that the Indian establishment does not have that kind of bargaining power in the international system. And that massively constrains what India can do and the extent to which it can sort of push its own agenda internationally. So often in such a situation, other international partners are looking for like-minded countries when they come up with alliances, come up with economic deals. Now, to the extent that India is no longer seen as a like-minded country for liberal democracies around the world, that is a worrying sign because I think that puts India in a significantly weaker position than it was in before.
All right, Sriram, I want you to come in on this and really look at what George Soros is saying today. A few weeks ago, we talked about the Eurasia Group's top 10 threats to watch out list right here on the show. I spoke to Ian Bremmer, and India again was at number 5, even ahead of the tensions with Iran at that point. How do you look at this kind of attention?
Okay, Tamanna, first to be very clear, none of these really mean anything in the real world. They don't mean anything when it comes to power politics. They don't mean anything when it comes to India's position or standing in the world. Now, let me explain why I'm saying this and what this actually means. But before that, I want to just say a few things about George Soros. George Soros is a spectacular, very special, very gifted financial markets trader, operator, speculator. But over the last couple of decades or so, he has turned from financial market investing into becoming a full-fledged political activist. He is now an open and avid supporter of progressive, liberal, left ideals and ideology. Nothing wrong with that. Anybody can do that. He's done it. He is now an open and very, very proud supporter of the Democrat Party in the United States, which explains his a rant against Donald Trump, and which just explains his deep and almost visceral dislike of Donald Trump that comes through in whatever statement that he has put out today. And he has watched with growing consternation, and this is not my words, and he's actually said this publicly in several forums around the world. He's watched in growing consternation the fact that left, liberal, progressive ideologies have taken a beating in several elections around the world, whether it is in the US, whether it is in the UK, or in India, or in any other place. And he has expressed that publicly. So his remarks today have to be seen in that context, seen through that prism, that he is actually a progressive, liberal, left activist, ideologist, supporter of the Democrat Party in the US, the supporter of the Labour Party in the UK, and you would expect him to actually dislike conservative governments or right-wing governments or right-wing ideologies or right-wing parties, and that is actually what is coming through in the statement that he has put out today. Now, specifically coming to the statement, he's talked about the fact that nationalism is taken a backseat in India, nationalism is striding forward in India, and that the government has actually taken punitive measures in Kashmir, which is a semi-autonomous Muslim region. What he forgets, and what he deliberately probably omits, is the fact that the law in Kashmir was passed by both houses of parliament, and it has not been questioned so far anywhere. So the idea that somehow India is an illiberal democracy and that the government is actually pushing through things down the throat is completely not correct. The second point in his statement that comes through is the fact that he has said that the CAA deprives millions of Muslims from citizenship. There is no more a blatant, bigger lie than this. It shows that he has not read the CAA, it shows that he's been badly advised, and it is actually very pathetic to see a brilliant financial markets trader and speculator blabbering utter complete nonsense and rubbish like this. How does the CAA deprive millions of Muslims from citizenship? How does it take away their citizenship? I mean, does he even know what he's talking about?
Okay.
I don't think so. I don't think he knows what he's talking about.
Okay, so okay, 1 minute. I'm going to open up this debate. Of course, Madhavan will come in as well, and I encourage anyone, if they want to rebut, to raise their hand and come. But quick question, Sriram. If I take it at face value that George Soros no longer needs to be looked at as an ace investor whose point of view should be respected, you know, he's kind of become an activist and lost it. What about The Economist? What about Time Magazine? What about Washington Post? Has everyone misunderstood India?
No. Well, on the CAA, please show me a factually correct article. Please show me a factually correct article, not an article that says that millions of Muslims have been deprived of citizenship. Show me a factually correct article.
Okay, let me get Madhavan Narayanan in.
And you know, and I think we should also remember one thing. And these are facts.
Okay.
You know, can I just
sure.
complete for 1 minute, Tamanna?
Yeah.
This is a very important factual point.
Okay.
Article 370 was abolished on August 5. Since then, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has gone to the United States, has been received in the United States. After that, the 2+2 dialogue has happened with Rajnath Singh and with Jaishankar, with his US counterparts in the US, and that happened in December. That happened after the CAA was passed, and after that Jaishankar met Donald Trump, and United States gave an exemption to the Chabahar port after the CAA was passed. And after the US visit,
but
Jaishankar
Trump has
went
no
to
issue.
Iran.
Trump has no issue. Sriram, Trump has no issue. George Soros,
and after his Iran
most
visit,
of George Soros' speech is devoted to demonizing Trump.
I'm only trying to say, I am trying to say only one point, that the belief that somehow CAA and Article 370 has diminished India's stature in global capitals is not correct. It's nonsense.
Okay.
It is not correct.
Let me get Madhavan in. Okay, let me take Sriram's argument forward to you. Madhavan, Sriram states very clearly that who cares what George Soros says. You know, he's lost his relevance. He's basically a political activist. You know, the democracy index, I don't know what Sriram's views are, but he's like, this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the real world. Do you agree? Where do you come in? Madhavan.
Yeah. I do think George Soros matters. Let me begin by saying that. But having said that, this is not just about facts, as Sriram says. The CAA is part of the story. It's not the entire story. And let us say you've lost me when you say factual issues on CAA. CAA is about principles, it's about morality, and George Soros' position is based on social and liberal morality. Don't confuse it with law or majority of the parliament. So this is about having a position, a worldview based on what I call modern multiculturalism. And Washington Post, Time Magazine, Transparency International, all of which have been joined subsequently by George Soros, represent this worldview based on modern multiculturalism, which is an ideal which is co-equal with the preamble of the Constitution of the Republic of India. So if you're going to merely discuss law and facts, you've lost the point. This is about a higher moral principle called multiculturalism. Second thing on whether are we discussing principles here or are we discussing whether he matters or not? The simple fact is that California, which is home to Google and Facebook, and Seattle, which is home to Microsoft, are all, whether we like it or not, part of this worldview of modern multiculturalism. And Satya Nadella's words are also pretty coincident with George Soros. So you can say, none of you matter, we are a great country, we are an ancient culture and our parliament has passed this, are all political and very, what you would call, cynical way of looking at the whole thing. The fact is that the world has moved on since nationalism. Nationalism was a relevant idea during imperial days. Today, the world, as the progressive part of the world, has moved on to modern multiculturalism. You may disagree with George Soros based on parliamentary majority. You may disagree with him based on cultural narcissism. You can disagree with him based on the fact that, it doesn't matter and we will do what we do as a matter of sovereignty. All of this may hold true, but it doesn't change. Let me quote Vishwamitra, who said, Dig balam, kshatriya balam, brahmatejo balam balam. Let me quote Sanskrit to the Hindutvavadis, who many of whom anyway do not know, haven't read enough of our own texts. We are not talking kshatriya bal here. We are talking brahma bal, which is moral power.
Okay.
And therefore, this is the essence of George Soros.
Yeah.
But the contagion, let me just begin by saying that if one person says it, let me quote James Bond, if one person does it, it's happenstance. If two people do it, it's coincidence. If three people do it, it's concerted action.
Only Madhavan Narayanan can quote
right
Sanskrit
now,
and
globally,
James Bond in one
a position
comment.
where liberalism.
Yeah, only Madhavan Narayanan can quote Sanskrit and James Bond in one comment.
I love it because that is the essence of Rig Veda.
I want to present the other side of the story.
Tamanna, 1 second.
One sec. No, just a quick count. Just a quick, not the other side, but just a quick counter. Fine. Maybe the Economist is not happy with us. George Soros is with us, by I mean the current government of India and their policies. Time Magazine, Washington Post, what the current government in all of its majority is doing does not sit with their worldview. Right. But the fact of the matter is, it is a democratically elected government doing exactly what they claimed they would. Exactly what they claimed they would. How can you take away from that, Madhavan? When you start an argument saying this is not about the facts and the facts don't matter, I'm sorry, your argument kind of sinks.
I agree with you, Tamanna. I agree with you on the fact, but the fact is that protests have their own place in a modern democracy, and the way you address the protests, the way you comment on the protests, just as you look at a financial balance sheet of a company, you will not just look at the numbers, you will also look at the footnotes and the caveats and the exceptions. Similarly, there is a culture to which we belong, and by that I don't mean ancient culture, I mean modern democratic culture. Tiananmen Square happened in China, We know what has happened. We know what has happened in Russia. Right now, increasingly, we seem to be moving towards a club that includes Turkey, Russia, and China. You may weigh in on that and say that's the way to go. That's your choice. But having made that choice, you cannot expect an alternative worldview to agree with you.
Okay.
You know, and somewhere it drops off on the investment climate, especially since a huge amount of the modern capital, including modern technology, comes from the US. And those kind of guys do not really
so
take
investment
kindly
climate,
to this
investment
kind of a
climate
worldview.
is one of those. Investment climate is maybe one factor. I mean, anyone who's countering that point will say, hey, look at the FDI inflows in India. Investors don't care. Right now, investors are really happy, with Mr. Bolsonaro. Where a lot of people think that he's a terrible leader, but he's pushing their economy forward. So maybe that's two different things. I want to also come to what people are saying about India across the world. Now, what do I care about? I care about the fact that why is, when those that are considered the brightest minds in the world, when they're talking about India, why are they no longer talking about the superpower of the 21st century? Why are they not talking about that bright spot in the economy, the burgeoning middle class, the next big story? Can we ignore voice after voice? Even politicians in the United States who are questioning some of our policies. Neelanjan, interesting debate going on here. You want to come in?
I think that, there is a lot, obviously, that India can say for itself, and I do think that as a general principle, we can argue that this is a democratic country doing what it's supposed to. That there are a lot of good things happening in India, but I think the main point that you've hit time and time again is that the tastemakers across the world, sort of the international elites, have responded very negatively to what is happening in India recently. And the question is, does India have the sort of bargaining strength within the international community to float an alternate position, to float an alternate way of doing politics that actually gains in bargaining power, gains in status at the international level? I think otherwise, as a net negative in terms of India's international status, we are seeing something that looks like a decline, even if what is happening may be perfectly correct based on domestic calculations, may be good for the governing party electorally. I think we should be seeing certain red lines that are being crossed in the international community, and what implications that can have for India's bargaining strength within the international community and going forward. I mean, I think if we're looking at the United States, we can look at a couple of small things that the US may have done in favor of India, but at the end of the day, we can see the end treaties to Pakistan, we can see how the US is behaving with Iran. It doesn't seem like India's interests have been a particularly important factor in making these kinds of decisions. And I think it becomes harder and harder for India to make its case as the international tastemakers are moving away from India.
But Trump gives two hoots for them either. So I don't know if there's a clear connection. Sriram, I don't know if there's a clear connection there, because the current, Trump administration, I won't set much by what George Soros says. I think the bigger question is, let's forget for a moment how X, Y, Z, the tastemakers, as Neelanjan says, think about us. The fact is that we are a divided society today. And that should concern us as well. Some of that is being reflected in how people are seeing us.
Okay, I'm afraid I'll have to disagree with you on that, Tamanna. When you say divided society, I hope you have some facts and some data to back this up. What is the data that you have to show that we are a divided society? After CAA and after Article 370, have there been any polls done on the popularity or not of these laws?
Let me come in
before you finish. Do we know for a fact what is the...
Since you've asked me, and it's a fair question. It's a fair question why I say that. I say that because of what I see around me. I see protesters sitting in different parts of the country, in almost every state. I see protests being led by the youth. I know anecdotally of families that have been split wide open because of different positions that they may have of CA and RC. I know of couples who are fighting or on the verge of, splitting with each other. So from the micro level to the macro level, in every street corner, in WhatsApp groups of housing societies, people are fighting about this. I'm sure that's something you've seen as well. If you were asking me for a census of how many people are for and against CA,
no, I've seen that as well, and no, hold on. I'm sure you can see this, I can see this, everybody else can see this. But the point is, it doesn't give you the full picture. Now, if you, for instance, let me explain this. Take away the political parties from this protest movement. Assume for a moment that neither the Shiv Sena, nor the Congress, nor the BJP, nor the DMK, nor the AMIM, or the TMC are anyway involved in the protests. Now, just consider then, what is the kind of popular support or the numbers that would have come out on the streets without any of these parties organizing anything? You will come with a number that is very, very different from what you are seeing in front of you now. Secondly, we are talking about the fact that a lot of families are fighting, a lot of people, friends have become enemies, there is a lot of discussion and debate and acrimony about this. But the fundamental point is, and the most important point is, this law, CAA, how popular is it? And how many people are opposed to it? Do we have any sound, reliable, credible data for that? I can show you a poll that I think the Sea Water did a couple of weeks back, or I think a month back or something.
What would be the barometer?
Yeah, that is an opinion poll. That is an opinion poll.
It's an interesting
I can show you
question.
that opinion poll. That is available online.
Would it be an opinion poll? Then what is the sample size?
62%.
No, would it be an opinion poll?
62% of the people supported CAA, and 32% of the people didn't support.
You're talking about a poll one channel did.
I mean, you can call Sea Water and find out.
Let's wait for the next few elections and see how people vote. But then I don't know if there is a way to know. It's an interesting question.
Yeah, sure. So let's, fair enough. Fair point. No. Fair point. Let's wait for a few more elections. Let's wait for a few more opinion polls and then find out. But to say that we are a divided society because of this, I wouldn't agree. Because we are, after all, at the end of the day, 80%, more than 80% is Hindu society. How divided are we?
Wait, this is a whole different picture. You're assuming by religion that people have one position. Okay, I have to get more people in. I have to get more people in on this. Yes, Madhavan Narayanan.
I don't know.
Last statement
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know. I don't know the answer to this.
There is evidence to show that there are people from the majority community who are not for the policy.
This doesn't sound like
that more than 80% of this country are Hindu.
Madhavan and then Neelanjan.
More than 80% of the country are Hindus. How many oppose, how many support, I don't know.
No, how does it matter? Yeah. It's a country of Indians. It's a country of Indians. Okay, Madhavan Narayanan. Yeah.
Exactly. Let me instead of going on ranting, let me say it in brief, terse ways. The Constitution of India is an instrument of consensus. It's not an instrument of majority. So if you're talking 80-20, you lost the debate there. It has to be 95 to 98%. And if it doesn't, it's not an instrument of consensus. And the CAA is one issue on which the instrument of consensus is being shaken. And it's not just about who has the citizenship. It's about who could stand in a separate green channel and a separate red channel or a slower channel in citizenship. Second, this debate today is not just about the CAA. Let's be very clear. George Soros is only the latest of the series of critics who have sprung up. And let me also point out to the gentle fact that N. Chandrasekaran, the chairman of the Tata Group, said something about doing business in India becoming difficult. Rahul Bajaj, a very respected industrialist who belongs to a family of freedom fighters, also stood up and questioned the Home Minister. Those who are abroad, including George Soros or Washington Post or Time Magazine, they are not looking for small spreadsheet bits of data. These are very smart people who get a sense from a huge amount of qualitative inputs. What artists say. A thinking person saying something in Bollywood has more weight than a simple opinion poll, because today's social is tomorrow's political is day after's economic. It's all connected, and whether you like it or not, we are not playing a data game, we are playing a conceptual game of social morality. And that has to be understood at an abstract level of thinking, and those who are guided merely by spreadsheet level of thinking will not get this.
Madhavan, you promised to give your comments to us. I'm almost out of time. Neelanjan, I'm afraid I will have to give the last word to Sriram, only because he is outnumbered. And here on this panel, Sriram, we care for both minority and majority voices. So you will get the last word to respond.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody in the, I'm sure Tamanna, everybody in this country, including the politicians, the government, the opposition, everybody cares for both the minority and the majority. I want to just respond to a few points that Madhavan has raised. The fact that you're not relying on data or evidence or logic is simply because you have lost the data argument. You have just completely lost it.
How can you have data on how
when you say that you shouldn't look at data and you shouldn't look at majority, you shouldn't look at the legal position. No, hold on.
It's not about majority. It's a morality.
I showed you an opinion poll. I showed you an opinion poll which said this. Now show me more opinion polls. Without that, let's not say that we are a divided country, because we do not know. We do not know the facts. Second point, there are people out there, both within this country and outside this country, who are misinterpreting and who are lying, blatantly lying. You got to call them out with data, you got to call them out with facts, you got to call them out with what the law actually says. And what the law actually says is not what George Soros says. Third point, when you talk about, I agree with Madhavan about the fact that many people like Mr. Chandrasekhar and Rahul Bajaj have criticized the government.
What the law doesn't say is also important.
It's on the economy issue, and we can take a lot of issues with the government about how they have handled the economy.
What
they have handled the economy. Can I just finish, Madhavan? Can I just finish? I'll listen to you patiently. Can I just finish? Yeah. So the idea that somehow this is some draconian measure that is being pushed through the throats of people, and that there is complete lack of democracy in India and complete dictatorship and authoritarianism. Where is that coming from? Where is the data for this?
Well, I hope if there is any, I have
to end. I
have to wrap. I hope if there is any such impression that the government doesn't care about what people think now that the law is passed, the government will duly correct those misimpressions by reaching out to those opposing this policy, going and meeting them, speaking to them as we'd expect in any open democracy. And while we should care about what the world thinks of us, we should also care about what Indians think of themselves and how harmonized they are. That's always been our strength. With that, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the panel this evening, and thanking all of you for listening to each other on debate number 1.